Okay, welcome back. And our special guest this morning is Professor Tahir Mamman, Minister of Education. And he's talking to us about efforts of the administration at fixing the education sector. It goes without saying that it does need fixing, and the minister has been telling us about efforts. He's spoken, if you haven't been with us from the beginning, about the crucial importance of statistics, data, and that, he said, is a work in progress. The minister has been talking about other areas that they are sort of keeping a close focus on. And in that connection, as I said, I wanted to ask you what your ideas are in the ministry about incorporating technology into education to increase the digital literacy of our students.
Thank you very much. Technology is very central to us and, of course, to the country and any educational system at this age and time. For the younger generation, these are natives of technology. They take very little efforts to, in fact, you don't even take technology to them. They are actually part of technology. So for us is to channel that skill and that curiosity into the education system. And this is what we are already doing. And first of all, as I said earlier on, we have established in all schools at the moment smart schools, where teachers will train and they have the opportunity to also to use technology in the classrooms. And every school, every state, we are expanding that. We are going to expand it to senatorial and possibly even local governments and right across before it goes into more schools. Then secondly, so digital skill is essential part of the school system already. And the curriculum, we are reviewing the curriculum of the schools, even primary schools, the curriculum of the schools, from primary to secondary schools, to incorporate the use of technology in all aspects of the classroom experience and delivery. And then, you remember, even during the COVID time, which has actually even been strengthened now, we use technology from the ministry here to train about 35,000 teachers. And right now, that's what we are doing to bring teachers on board to have the digital skills so that they take it to the classrooms. And if I may tell you, there's a very, very good, as I said earlier at the beginning, technology is native to our students and their classes now. Our students won the #1 slot in robotics competition in about 4 West African countries. Right now, and then we have about 18 of our students going to the USA, for a similar competition, having succeeded in Nigeria in a series of intercontinental international competitions. Right now, about 18 of them are going to the US to participate, to continue with their participation in that competition. So technology is already a very central part of our program, and we are working with the Ministry of Communication and Digital Technology and the Ministry of Communication, Science and Technology very closely to incorporate some aspects of AI, robotics, and some of the digital skills which are necessary and current to incorporate them in the curriculum. And so technology is something that is already native to the ministry. It's a tool that we are using as a tool, and we are using it as a knowledge, to prepare our students for the present and the future.
Indeed. And in this regard, Minister, could you talk to us a bit more, please, on updating the curriculum to align with current societal needs? These are different times. You've touched on that. So the curriculum, we often have a situation where we've heard from even some tertiary institutions where the technical libraries are outdated. So we hear from the students. But since you spoke about updating the curriculum. It will be interesting to hear how thorough you think that work is being, the rate at which it is proceeding. How thorough do you think it is in order to align us with current needs, which are totally different from when Nigeria was really ruling the waves in the 50s and the 60s, maybe even 70s in education and scholarship?
Well, thank you very much. There are resources, there are more resources now online than actually even the physical resources, and we have invested so much in it. Nigeria universities have invested so much in it, and then the ministry is also invested so much in electronic resources. So, that's what is needed. That's what we are doing at the moment. Millions and millions of resources are out there in electronic format for the use of students, and it's only of recent. TEDFund launched. We launched a program here developed by called TERAS, which is a digital platform that allows millions of students in tertiary and even below tertiary institutions to have access to electronic materials right up from all over the world. And there are some other very robust digital resources which we are making available, to schools and institutions. So we are investing so much, even in our budget this year. The budget on e-resources for all schools, secondary schools and the other levels of schools is billions. And so we recognize the value of these resources that will be available to students and teachers. So much is being invested in that. And then the curriculum we are reviewing, it also captures some of these things. Curriculum is a very dynamic document. It's not supposed to be static. And so only of recent, the ministry launched a new revised curriculum for secondary schools in Nigeria, and the ones also for primary schools is underway. Policy and some form of curriculum for primary schools is also underway, is currently being reviewed to ensure that we bring the entire education system to the current needs of the country. And you remember the controversy about history one time when, unfortunately, it was dropped out of the courses being offered at secondary school level. This has long been brought back and as a compulsory course. And in fact, at some point, there was even a shortage of teachers in history because of that problem. Now we're able to train more teachers now through the technology, through electronic resources. And so we have enough of them to be able to handle that subject. And the training was really carried out from the ministry online, to generate enough number of teachers to handle that. So the ministry has invested so much on technology, both as a ministry and in the schools. And right now, we also have TEDFund, working on learning hubs in all the polytechnics in Nigeria, so that we have a very robust system for innovation for the students at that level, and it's both for innovation and skills development in all those schools, coming back again to the issue of skill that I mentioned. The same thing in the university. We are supporting in the universities to set up innovation centers so that we can contribute meaningfully. Our scholars are doing so much already, but they still need a lot of support so that they don't have problems with current and technology-driven resources to be able to conduct their researches and connect with the rest of the world in those particular areas they are doing their researches. And I have seen some breakthrough researches across. The only missing link is off-takers. We don't have industries in Nigeria. Unfortunately, our people, we don't have any off-takers of products of researches for them to become products in our country. And in the next weeks and months, I think this is what the National Council of Skills will be working on to ensure that such researches in the institutions, see the light of the day in terms of products in our country. And so these are the kind of things that we are focusing on to ensure that we are very current and we are in our researches, and our scholars are also producing relevant researches for the development of our country, because like anywhere else, scholars and researchers are actually the path to the development of any country. And so we want to see that handshake between industry and our institutions, and so that we don't have to import so many things into the country. If they are working together, we'll be able to produce a lot of things for the development and use in our country.
Yeah, since, before we even get to this level of education you've just spoken about, I'd like to return to the foundational level once more. Your efforts at improving access and quality in rural and remote areas, one, and then making it worth the while, that is incentives for teachers to actually go to such areas. So if we have children in these far-flung remote areas, oftentimes it is thought that they might have been neglected. I'm sure it must be on your mind as to how to improve access and quality and teachers in those areas. Tell us about that, please.
Well, access and quality to education is a very central theme for the country. And actually, even the international community, that is what the SDG 4 is all about, the Agenda 2030, on education. This is very central to it. So it's extremely important for Nigeria to be able to achieve on that agenda. And as I said at the beginning, it's very important for us to have our children, particularly those in the rural areas, to be able to access education. And the key problems, the major issues which facilitate that, is to have schools close to them, to have schools that are suitable, that is, they have create the right environment within those schools, have suitable learning resources in those schools, have teachers who are motivated. And so in many places, some of these factors are problems. They are problems because the schools are a bit further away, and then teachers are simply not there in their numbers or even in terms of their qualifications. So we are working with the governors and encouraging the governors. You remember, schools at that level actually are essentially owned by the schools. But because of the problems which have bedeviled them, it has become a national issue. And the federal government, necessarily have to come in through the law that requires the federal government to set minimum standards. And of course, as you know, it's a constitutional requirement anyway for every child to go to school. It's a compulsory level of education for everybody. So the federal government is driving the process to ensure that there is access. Sorry?
I said, and then encouraging teachers to go to such far-flung, remote environments.
Yes. It's a very serious issue because if you don't incentivize them, then it becomes a problem. The environment is problematic, and then the motivation is simply a problem. So that's why we have some kind of policies on teachers training and support, where there are incentives for those posted to the rural areas. But unfortunately, the implementation of this policy has not been full, and so we are revising that, looking at that, to see how that can be strengthened and then fully implemented. This is one of the things that we want to achieve. You remember I mentioned 2 pillars now. The third one now is the teachers' support and development. We are taking that very seriously because no matter the policies you come up with, if your teachers are not well motivated, they are not well trained, and they are not supported, you are not going to deliver on all those core values, objectives that we have set out. So this is
Honorable
one of the
Minister,
third...
I beg your pardon for interrupting you,
Yes,
Honorable Minister, but at this stage, the nature of our program is that we also allow viewers to call in. And they will say I've greedily used up most of the time, but Ada is waiting on the line. Ada is in Jos. Good morning. Good morning, Ada in Jos.
There is a direct correlation between education and development. This explains why it's difficult for a nation to rise above its human capital. Therefore, there's a need for qualitative education. The problem we have in Nigeria is not just the formulation of policies. Even our curriculum is not even the issue. Sometimes we have a very good curriculum, everything is built into it, but then implementation is an issue, you know. So then we have some policies that are a bit funny. For instance, the school feeding program. I'm not against school feeding program, but I'm against where this feeding is done in an environment that is not conducive for learning. And then at the end of the day, feeding is taking place and learning is not taking place. So it doesn't make sense as far as I'm concerned. Then another major problem again we have in education, apart from the poor budgetary allocation for education, corruption and politicizing it. You know, we can't continue like that. And we should emphasize this idea of thinking that it is when you get to the tertiary level. The most important one is the primary and secondary. If we get it right at that level, by the time somebody is finishing, a student is finishing in the secondary school level, the person will be equipped with skills and can be self-employed and what have you. In some of the advanced countries, more than 50% of their population don't go to the tertiary level because they have this skill acquisition and the rest of them, vocational education, inbuilt from primary school. And it's not like that.
All right, thank you very much, Ada. We'll let the minister comment on, your contribution. Thank you very much, Ada, for calling in. Minister?
Well, I agree with you. You know, you can have a very beautiful curriculum, policy, and then falter in implementation. But for us in this government, this is the gap that we have come in to fill. All our policies, we insist they must drop. They must come down to the practical level. And so that's what we are going to do to ensure that every policy that we come up with is something that has to be implemented, and we'll put in place a scheme that will ensure that they are implemented. And of course, a lot of times we are really very cynical because of years of failures and all that, but this government is about implementing policies. And I can assure you for certain, that's the direction we are heading. That's what we want to achieve. And that's why at the beginning I mentioned this thing about data, because the data helps you to put the spotlight on where the problems are and where you can intervene without wasting resources. You have very limited resources, so a lot of times in the past we've been beating about in the bush, in the dark, and people focusing on issues in isolation, agencies and ministries, operating in isolation. Once you have information, you will know the pattern, the trends, and the weaknesses of the system. You cannot intervene appropriately, channel your resources appropriately for maximum impact, and that's what this ministry is now set to do. And
okay, I got to bring on. I beg your pardon, Minister. I beg your pardon. Forgive me, Minister, for interrupting you. But another caller came on board. Good morning, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yari. Good morning to the Honorable Minister.
Yes.
Honorable Minister, sir, I want to speak on the question of the students' loans scheme that is coming up. We know that the president means well. He wants the average family in Nigeria for their children to have education. But I have some worries about it. Whether the scheme will reach the actual people that the president wants it to reach. I'm saying this because of one example. In the past, immediate past administration, the Minister of Labor, who is now the Minister for Aviation, that's Festus Keyamo, had a program that wanted to give jobs to 20,000 people in every local government in Nigeria. He was in the battle with the National Assembly members. They insisted that they must have their own allocation to get to who they want to give it to. It was a battle to the extent that when he was nominated for ministerial post in this government, they didn't want to confirm him.
Okay, Mr. George, thank you very much, sir. I think the minister can, understand your imports and where you're going. So, Minister,
again, I share with him his concerns, and based on previous experiences, but I can assure you this loan is meant for Nigerians, and it's going to reach the targets. The president is so passionate about law that he will not allow any obstacles in it reaching the targeted beneficiaries, and if incorporated in the law itself, the national spread and then, of its benefits. And that is why even in the later version, the amended version of the law, skills are being incorporated into it. So it's not just available to those in tertiary institutions, but even those who are going through short-term skills programs in approved skill training centers. So for certain, students' loan will be available to those who apply and who are eligible and who need it. The president has said it emphatically that he does not want to see any child, any Nigerian citizen not going to school because of poverty. And
okay, we're going to have to leave it there, Minister. I beg your pardon. Forgive me, Minister, for my rudeness in jumping in from time to time, but the clock is really counting down. So do please forgive my the way I interject sometimes. But let me end with this particular question, which concerns us as Nigerians. Communication ability and skills in the language of instruction. We are Nigerians. How importantly are you taking that? We're talking about rural areas. You know the kind of way we are. Is the sole language of instruction English? And if it is not going to be English, this whole matter about ability and skills in the language of instruction, is that very important in the policies that you are working on?
Well, it is actually already in the law. You see, a lot of times we have this bit of inability to look at the instruments around us. The law I mentioned earlier on said instruction at that level, you know, pre-primary and primary school can be conducted in the language of that area. That is what that law says. But of course, the key challenge will be the diversity of our country and our communities, and then which, if you, for instance, a particular local government decides to use a particular language, of course, where there is some level of consensus about the language, they can do that. The law allows it, honestly. You know, so they can use it both from that level, and then as progressive as they develop, English language will now become the language of instruction. So there's a legal provision for it. So it's a question of the practicality and the politics of it. That's just the only issue that we have to address.
Okay, then. Well, Minister, there's so many questions. You can imagine education concerns everybody, but we've run out of time. Yeah. And so we would like to register our appreciation for your making time to come on our program today and telling us about efforts at fixing the education sector. I certainly wish you well, but you have indicated that there is much work to be done. Thank you very much for coming on our program, Minister.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
All right, then. Okay, so we're going to have to leave it there then. This is our program. We're going to have to leave our program today. Please do join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Iyori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.